Hello everyone, is Regis here in person. So I'm just back from my trip to the Lanzateos, more precisely the area generally referred to as the St. Patrick's Zec. And it was quite an adventure, and this video here is basically to recap the whole experience, to kind of recap the what I found out of it, and this will be the kind of the kind of final verdict on this project, so that then after that we can move on to other topics. Okay, so this is the recap video. It might be long, but I'll try to cover every aspect that I've been investigating and that I've realized for the area, and then give my final impression on it, and then this will serve as the reference for the future relating to that. Okay, so without further ado, before I even go into the details, I'm going to give right away my final rating of the area so we can start with it. And if you want to watch the whole video, then you'll have more details on every aspect. Well, okay, so the things that I've determined is that, first of all, the area of Lake of where Freedom City is extremely far and it's extremely isolated. It's actually difficult to access. The roads are difficult. Now, this is both an issue, but at the same time, it's strategic as an asset. So is both bad and good at the same time, depending on how we look at it and what our purpose is, right? I've also looked at the woods, the type of trees of the area, and that was pretty important because the trees you have determine what you can do with it. And I was extremely pleasantly surprised to realize that it was a hardwood forest. Wow, and almost entirely hardwood. There's very, very few evergreens. It's dominant hardwood, and that was amazing because it changes the type of town you have, the town of building you have. So that was very nice. The climate itself is amazing also. I was very pleasantly surprised. Sometimes because it feels far, and because it's far, sometimes people have this reflex to think that it's going to be cold and horrible weather. And no, actually, it's is very similar to the Ottawa region. So that this is very warm for the northeastern North America, mind you. It's not Texas, but for that area, it is very nice. It was surprisingly warm and surprisingly dry climate, at least relative to where I am right now. I'm used to a much more humid type of weather. So it was very pleasant. Although it was a bit warmer because it was drier, the climate was very, very nice. The type of earth, of soil, is mostly sandy loam. And that's also significant. Now, the type of soil changes depending if you're closer to the river, which is very, very sandy. Actually, is sandy. It's actual sand, Mexico-style sand. I'll come back to that. But as you move into the forest, you move into a more of a sandy loam earth. So that's very nice because it has excellent drainage. You can also very good for farming, at least considering that type of soil. Once amended and prepared, very good. Like we know it from the United States, for example, that very good area. Plenty of areas are farming on sandy loam and have great success. So we can definitely farm. So really what I've realized about that area is that it's a little paradise, a hidden paradise. It's like a sanctuary, really a sanctuary. Really highly impressed. I give high notes to that area. And considering all the aspects that I've seen, and mostly impacted by the distance and difficulty to get there, and I'll detail that, my final verdict is that it would make a potential fantastic Plan B. Okay, like Plan B. Now, why do I say that? Is that, well, I mean, it's beautiful and it would be great to live there, but because it's so hard to get there, it's so isolated that building would be difficult. Not even that, but bringing materials will be difficult. So it really is starting from scratch, starting from nothing. Really, for people who want to be to live that pioneer, very, very pioneer life, rustic life, at least in the early days until in the early years until we have a town established. Until we have a town established. So what I realize is that most people will never move there unless they become desperate. Okay, because people are comfortable in their lives where they are. Nobody will start from nothing in forest, isolated forest. No, they won't. They will only do that if the world was to go to chaos, if there was World War III, a civil war, or famine, or things went bad, people feel scared. Then they would immigrate like our ancestors did 200 years ago or so, and they would pack and move to the unknown. So it would be a case of that. Like so, from what I've realized is that this area is a beautiful Plan B. So we're gonna keep it open. It's ours. It's part of Teos, and if anybody wants to build and go there someday and build, we're ready for it, and it's possible. But we won't focus our main efforts on that because again, it's for another time when things will be more complicated, and we'll redirect our efforts to other approaches until then. Okay. So that was kind of the recap. Now I'll go into the detail. Now, before I go any further, I just want to say when I'm going to mention names of areas, if I say, for example, Quebec, Canada, Ontario, if I say Saguenay-Lac-Saint-Jean, or if I Ottawa, I do not mean the legal entities. Okay, that's not what I'm saying. I mean the geographical areas generally referred to by the name that I'm using. Okay, so I'm really talking about land areas, and these names serve to. So if I say Zec St. Patrice, I mean that kind of area, because again, remember, for example, that Zec St. Patrice is a legal entity that exists only in Quebec. So for Tayos, that doesn't exist. There's no such thing for Tayans as Zec St. Patrice. It doesn't exist for us. But if I use the name, it's because I refer to that area as a region. Okay. If I do mean the legal entity, like for example the state of Quebec or the state of the province of Quebec, I'll clarify it this way, right? I'll make it clear that I'm talking about the legal entity. Otherwise, by default, it is the geographical area reference. Okay. So I left. So I went on vacation. I left on the 26th of May last week of 2023. So it was a Friday. I made my way, and what I did realize is it's far. It's extremely far because, well, first of all, for where I am, and I'm not that far away. I had to drive all the way to the area of Gatineau. And from there, you still have another hour or so to go to get to that area of Pembroke, Ontario, Chapeau, Quebec. And when you're there, you're still not there because then you have to hit the forest and through these dirt roads, back roads, and it's intense. It's like if you have it's made for big trucks. It's made for, if you have a big pickup, you're fine, you can do it. But if you have a little city car like I have, very low on wheels, made for for asphalt, you can break your car. There's a lot of stones popping up. You're driving, a lot of stones, and actually, I probably did break my car. That's another story. It's very hard access, and that's the roads, and I'll detail them later. So yeah, so the roads. So again, very tough access, and the roads are basically logging roads. So they're not. There's two roads. They're basically logging roads. Like I said, lots of big rocks, and you can break your car. For example, here I'm going to show. So here we see the two roads. Okay, so the main one, the most important one, and the best one is the purple one, which is called Le Chemin des Bois Francs. So road of the hardwoods, and it's a good name because it is hardwoods. So that purple line, it actually is longer, but is the better road. It's you'll be driving on gravel for most of the line, and the black line represents the border, more or less, roughly the border of Teos. So as soon as you hit the black line, you pass into Teos. So around Jim Lake, you move into Teos, and then there the road becomes rougher. So again, less pebble, more rocks. And so it's not an easy road. And even if it takes a good hour and a half, because you won't be driving very quickly. On that road, you're probably going between 40 or 50 kilometers an hour to 70 kilometers an hour. Probably not much more because otherwise you can break your car. Like it's a rough road, but you eventually get there. There is the second road, which is the one from Chapeau, and this one is in two parts. So you have the yellow line, is the good part, was basically it's good road. So that one you can drive pretty normally, but as soon as you hit the red line, you enter the forest, and ironically, it almost pretty much when you hit the line of Teos, it just happens that you enter the forest and boom, you enter into Teos. And that road is rough. It's a rough road. It's a logging road. I would say don't take it, really, right? It's very rough. From what I saw, sometimes it even, like the sand, probably after some storms, the sand runs away. There's repairs, so sometimes the road may not be even passable. Lots of stones, easy to break your car. If it rains, could be mud pits. You know, you could stay. It's a rough road. So I would recommend the other road, of course. But I did do both because I went one way and came out the other way. And then when you finally get there, but to drive into the area of the lake, the roads are also very, very rough. Lots of stones. Again, easy to break your car. If you have a city car, it's not ideal. Not easy to pass with big trucks. So for deliveries of construction material, very hard. It's very isolated to reach that area, which you can see as a yellow circle of the St. Patrick's Zec, but really City of Freedom, right? In that area, the Patriots County of Teos. So that makes it very difficult. There's also the fact that we have to consider that if Teos took over, remember Quebec cannot cut the woods anymore. They lost the area. It belongs to Teos now. So Quebec may stop maintaining these roads. So Teos will have eventually to take over the maintenance, and since we don't have their means, the region may become more isolated until we have the means. And in winter, it may even be closed because we may not be able to open a 70-kilometer amount of roads anytime soon. So it may be closed. Now, this is not the first time that would happen if we were to live in isolation. Because, again, it's both a negative and a positive that it's so isolated. It's a negative because it's hard to get there, it's far, it's a big drive, difficult to get materials if you want to build. May not even be possible because you can't just go to a hardware store, buy your stuff, and then get it delivered. Hey, come on, no, it's super far. They may do it, but it's not simple. But there's a positive in all that, is that because it's so isolated, it becomes a sanctuary, right? You can live, especially that Teos is a country, right? So you can live away from the rest in peace and quiet without interference because the distance is great. It's not easy to get there. So this can become a positive once the city's set up and for peace and quiet, while the rest of the world may be in turmoil, and Teans may be living in peace in their literally in a utopia, isolated into that place. It's not the only first time that has happened. For example, I'm sure there's others, but I can think of in Quebec, you have the region of Saguenay-Lac-Saint-Jean. Now that is a region that is for many years was very distant and isolated from everywhere else, up to the 90s, when you wanted to leave that area to get to the city, which is Quebec City, you had to go through well, even today, but this because they built a better road since, more of a highway. But until that time, you had a very dangerous road through the Laurentian Mountains, and it just so happens that that area has a particularly mean microclimate where there's a lot of rain, a lot of snow. It's intense. People are right when they say the only month you're 100% sure that you won't hit snow is July in that area. Any other month, even in June or August, you could potentially hit snow. It's that kind of, like they used to call it the road, the highway of the devil, and with it was true because, well, it was extremely dangerous, crazy dangerous. It's no joke dangerous. A lot of big trucks, logging trucks going fast, and little car, one road. Some people get impatient. They want to pass. You can't. Wavy road in that crazy climate. You hit a snowstorm. People would kill themselves less. And actually, they built a better road in the 90s or so. For that reason, it was just too dangerous. The point being that people were very isolated and when lived there for a long time before then eventually. And when you wanted to go to the city, it was a trek. It was an adventure. You left for many days to go to the city. So it has been seen before. So what we were doing with Teos there is not new. It has been done. So we have to understand that. So when I left, I went to, first of all, I took the first purple road and I went up to about 37 kilometers all the way to where the border starts to Jim Lake, and I laid out a post. So a sign, and here we have it. So this sign is a bit inside the border of Teos. So you're literally looking at Teos, the state of Teos lands. So I laid that sign there, so it's officially marked as you're entering sovereign jurisdiction. But then I did not continue. I came back. I went back to Pembroke in Ontario, well, the region of Ontario, to Gas. And after that, I took the other little road, the tougher one, and laid another sign, this time at about 21 kilometers outside of the Bridge of Chapeau, which is where the Teos border starts. And again, you can see here the little sign inside of the Teos border. So this is the other little road, the tougher one, and again this. So the both roads have been marked at the border, or roughly the border, for Teos sovereignty, and then I went on to that little road. It looks not so bad on the photo, but it becomes very rough later on. I probably damaged my car. I'm surprised my car made the way and back. Actually, it is kind of broken. I'm gonna have to give it a tune-up because my engine now is shaking weirdly. So I probably damaged a bit there. But anyways, it survived. So during my first night, I arrived and I actually took the wrong turn. I didn't know it's not easy. It's not well identified over there. You know, in the woods, it's not particularly. There's not a lot of civilization there, and a lot of it's nearly nobody. Here's what happened is I was looking to reach that yellow line, which is the northern part of the river. That's where I wanted to go. I ended up taking the wrong turn because of the way the signs were marked. And I took the red line. So I took the red line and you reach a little camping there. And then I kept going. And eventually I ended up in that blue area. And this is where I spent the first night. Now, I clarify, at the moment I didn't know, I didn't know exactly where I was. At first I thought I might be where I wanted to be, but I didn't see the little river. But then when I arrived, I was surprised to arrive in a region that is completely logged. Everything's been cut. The whole forest has been clear cut. It's very impressive because it's a huge area. And because of there was mud, I almost damaged my car. I almost stayed stuck in the mud. So I was afraid to come back right away. And when I got there, I drove around in the clear-cut areas, and then eventually the sun was coming down. So I decided to camp there because I didn't want to stay stuck. And there's an hour left to go before the night comes down. So I camped there. It turned out to be very comfortable, and it was nice because it's been logged out so much. There was hardwood everywhere, so I could easily find wood very good wood, dry wood, to make campfires. So I was very comfortable. I had a great night, and I'm gonna play the next morning. I made a little video of the area, and I'm gonna play this right now, which will don't move. Here it is. And so I played it now. It's a bit long, but it was my first morning. I remember that I wasn't quite sure where I was, but I began to suspect that I might be in that southern area of the lake. I later went for a trek into the trails because, eventually you hit trails. There's still some trails in the mountains. And then when I walked the trails for a few hours, I eventually saw the little lakes that you can see a little south of that red line. And eventually I realized that I was south, and on that day I left, and I eventually went up there. So I'll come back to that later. But here's the video where I was talking about that clear-cut area, and it's sad that it's been clear-cut. Obviously, the wood was stolen in a way. We weren't there before, so we can't blame them too much, but it's a bit disappointing because it's good wood we could have used ourselves. At the same time, there's positive, though, because, I'll talk about it after the video so you have an idea. So here it begins.
Hey everyone, this is Regis here in person. So this is day 2 or day 1 full day at the lands of Teos, and more precisely Freedom City. So that's pretty cool. So I actually I'm pretty sure I took a wrong turn. It's very confusing around here, and I'm on the southern side of the lake instead of the northern one. So I'm just about to go there now. So but it's pretty cool because it being here still completed what I was trying to accomplish, which is to survey the lands, get an idea of what it looks around here. And so it goes. We do have a better idea. Actually, it's pretty cool. Okay, first of all, most important, it's hardwood forest. That is pretty freaking fantastic. It's a high dominant hardwood forest. It's almost all hardwood, really. Look, you see there, it's just hardwood. Everywhere, it's hardwood. So there's very little evergreens, and the dominant strain of evergreen is pine. I guess both red pine and white pine, I figure. I'm not an expert, but in any case, it's pine, which is, at least as far as I'm concerned, being used to the more northeastern part of North America, it's pretty rare. It's usually balsam fir. So pines, lots of pines, that's fantastic. It's a very warm forest. It's also a dry forest compared to at least where I'm used to in the area generally referred to as Mont Tremblant, which is colder. So it's actually very, very cool. I went for a trek in the woods. It's very nice. And what we're seeing here now is that basically this is Quebec was operating a ZEC on the public lands while they were public, before they were taken by Teos. And a ZEC is basically a controlled zone. So basically they're logging essentially. Sorry, the flies here are eating, but in the woods there's not that many. It's just up here in the clearing. So yeah, so basically the companies are logging, and so they've been clearing the woods. But so as you can see, there's piles of wood. It's all hardwood. Look at that. That's maple right there. You got birch there. Yeah, it's all good wood. Actually, it's all great wood. So what is nice about this is that they've been making roads for their trucks to pass, so they can collect the woods. And these clearings, they basically they did 60% of the work for us. Like, they cleared the wood. Now, of course, we lost the wood, but we can't blame them. Teos was not here before, so it's kind of, they'll regrow. But you see, the wood is now. Mind you, the land is not de-stumped, and it's still very rough. There's still work to do, hard work too. But at least the cutting is done, or mostly done, and the logs have been taken out. So that's a large part of the work. So that's kind of important, because we could very easily build houses around here. Like, lands, people could start colonizing. There's still work to do, but some work has been done for free. Well, for free, they got paid in wood, so there's no big deal there. They're compensated. So this is just a teeny part. There's like huge areas of so we really have acres and acres and acres of cleared forest, which is basically helping us because the area is cleared. So that's pretty amazing, considering everything. So this means that the pioneers, the colonists who would like to come here and build them homesteads, I mean, it's going to be a lot of work. It's definitely pioneer work, but it's definitely feasible. And actually, as we can see, work has been done already. People can arrive here, use the roads, and clear up, build their first home, or their first cabin at least. And then once they got something, can always build something bigger later. So you see, these are the woods. It's all hardwood. It's beautiful. It's incredible. It's really a wonderful forest. I can't believe this area is unused. It's cleared. I can't believe this area can make an incredibly wonderful city. The climate is nice for these kind of trees to grow. It's a very nice climate for North America, at least. The bugs level is actually fairly low. Here there's a bit more because we're in the clearing, but as soon as you enter the woods, it's very comfortable. They're really not annoying. So here we're pretty much at the tip of a certain area where they've been logging. Not quite sure how it works, but they seem to make these zones and become clear the wood. So as we can see, still piles here. Birch again, maple down there. Like, it's hardwood. Now that's incredible, because it means that as a city, once the homesteads are, we have like a near infinite amount of hardwood to build. So we can build with hardwood instead of pine, or that's crazy. We have pine too, but it's extremely, extremely high quality wood. So you can make very strong houses, good furniture. Definitely high quality wood. And Quebec has been allowing the cuts here, but that's gonna end as Teos takes place. So they don't seem to have been operating this year, from what I see. This seems to be from last year. The wood is dry, so up to now does not seem to be any logging activity. But as you can see, it's all hardwood. So you see all this clearing, and there's acres and acres and acres. It's, over there is full. It's very large. These are all areas where people can build their homes. At the very least, a base camp. We can get set up. and then once you have a base camp, a basic town, then after that you can expand and start getting comfortable. And within a couple of years, I don't know, 30 years, 50 years, you've got a city, in quotes, a large town, and you go living. So the sand is very sandy loam, essentially, as far as I would know. It's sure we can definitely grow thing here. Probably a bit acidic. I've seen a lot of blueberries, which is good. But it also means that the soil is probably a bit acidic, but that's fine. We can always transfer it over time, burn it with wood ashes, especially with a lot of hardwood. Each time we burn, spread the ashes on the land, eventually it will terraform, if you see what I mean. And eventually it can be very good producing lands. It's a very nice area. So I'll make more videos.
Okay, so as you saw, yeah, the cuts are intense, and the area is huge of cuts. So I was just in one area. I was near like the tip where they as far as they got, but there's immense areas all logged out. So they logged out a huge area. So if you look on Google Maps and you see like that photo that I shown of the blue area, now if it was updated, you would see just clear cut for huge areas. I actually happened to talk with some of the locals on my last day, and they were curious actually who I was, why I was there. So we kind of talked a bit quickly because I had to go. I was afraid my engine would stall, so after hitting a few rocks. But anyways, we could talk a bit, and they were actually hoping I was with Greenpeace, because they're very pissed off of these clearings, because the clearing is total. They cleared everything, and like the whole swaths of forests are gone. So they're very disappointed. So they were hoping I was with Greenpeace to stop that. But the good luck is, well, I'm not with Greenpeace. I obviously am with Teos. But good luck if they ever watch this video, they'll be happy to hear that Teos is even more powerful than Greenpeace, because now Quebec does not own these lands anymore. Actually, they never owned them, but they lost the claims to these lands. Now these lands belong to the state of Teos. So Quebec can't cut anymore, and Teos has no intention to cut. So these forests will regrow, and there should be no more cuts. So that should be good. Now again, as impressive as the cuts may be, they kind of have a good side. Well, first of all, the loggers, to be able to pass with their big trucks, is they make these sandy roads, and they're massive roads, and they're solid roads for these big trucks. So that kind of eases our ability. So in that area, you can go with your delivery truck and get stuff delivered. And okay, so that's kind of nice. You also, because they cleared the forest, they did a lot of work for us. Well, they stole good wood, as I said, but at the same time, they did good work. They cleared the woods. So it's ready for homesteads. The wood will regrow. Now, of course, they did not clear they did not de-stump. So that part would still have to be done. But it's not that hard. I mean, worst case, you de-stump where your house will be. The rest will rot over time. So you let it go. The rest of the woods, the forest will regrow over time. But because it's cleared, in a way, it's ready. You can arrive. We assign you your land, and then your 5 acre, and you start building your home and building your homestead. So it's that, in that sense, it might be a good area. Now, the only kind of bad thing, it's not a bad thing, but it's not really the area I was planning on building first. I would prefer the southern area where there's the river. But if people say, hey, I'd like to go live there, well then fine, we can open it up. Because eventually I would see the whole surrounding of the lake someday being, surrounded by homesteads and having a city of homesteads for the future. Now, there's also what's annoying a bit with these clear cuts is they use machinery to clear and remove the wood, and naturally the wood is kind of flat and kind of organizes itself. But after they pass, they kind of ruin the terrain, and you end up with these pools of water, and that becomes swamps, waterlogging, and of course you get mosquitoes. So that's kind of a bit disappointing. So that gives us work. We'll have to over time, as we build, we'll have to clear the lands in the area. So that's all to kind of keep in mind. So anyway, so I stayed there that day, and then the next day I moved back up to where I really wanted to be. And so here's the map. So here's the campsite spot. So I went back up, and then I hit that yellow road, and that's where I wanted to be. So the yellow road itself is long, and it's very rough terrain. Again, with a little city car like mine, very hard. You can damage your car. I guess if it rains, when it rains, there's probably some mud. You can stay stuck. It's not for everybody. Sadly, it's not a good road. It will need to be improved. But anyways, I managed to do it. Luckily, with my little car, I did hit rocks, probably damage my engine, but I got to that point where I wanted to be, which is where the orange arrow is. This is where I decided to camp. Now, I clarify. I would have liked, if I had known, I would have liked to be able to move around and change my tent and camp around at different places. But because I had given a rendezvous, right, with people, I had to leave my tent at the same spot for the whole time in case people would arrive. Now, we didn't get a lot of people, understandably, because it's way further, way deeper in the woods, way harder to get. The roads are tough, so it was very difficult for people to get there. So I don't blame anybody for not coming, but some people did come. But we did get some people, some from Gatineau, so obviously for them it's closer. Some from Hamilton, Ontario, very far away. They drove 12 hours to them. So very impressed by them, so thank you guys. But we had a good time, even if it was short, the time they were there. So, but basically, yeah, so camped at that little orange arrow, and it was a good spot. Because then it allowed us to do various things. So, for example, let me just change the maps here. So here we have the same map. So from the point where I was camped, between the two lines there, the yellow and the blue line was where the camping was. Well, from there I could walk the yellow line all the way up and get to Lake McCann, which we will see soon. And also I could go down to another little trail which would lead to the river. So that was a great spot. And there was also another little river that was cute. Actually, I can show you that right now. So so it was a good camping spot, and that's why I stayed there. There was also a little pond or swamp close to that. That made it kind of a bit tougher on the mosquitoes. I did stay there because once I had to stay there, and second because there was also good other areas, so that was kind of mitigated there. So here I'll show you the little brook that was close to the right next to the camping site. So that's a little brook, and what you don't see from the brook is that it actually is fed in from well, it comes from Lake McCann, which I'll show you in a moment, which then feeds into another little smaller lake, but still fairly big, which is a beaver lake. So you can actually you can see the beaver dam. I didn't take a picture, but I should have maybe. But a beautiful beaver dam, and then that little dam leads to that little river brook, which you just saw, and that little brook feeds into the Moria River, which we'll see later. So Lake McCann was very nice. I'm going to show a video in a moment. It was nice because we had little boats we could use, so we actually went fishing there. I actually caught a fish. That was nice. I would go also swim in the evening. You know, after the whole day is sweaty and the anti-mosquito oils and you feel dirty. So I would go take a good swim in that lake, and it was wonderful. So here it is, Lake McCann.
Hey everyone, just showing off the wonderful lakes of Teos. Here we are on the wonderful Lake McCann. You are now watching Teos in all its glory. So basically the someday Freedom City, actually this is Freedom City would be down there where I'm filming, so right in the back of that is the Moria River, Lake Zion there. So people's lands and homesteads will be there. And this is a bit more northern, and here in Lake McCann people can come in swim and fish and do enjoy everything you can do in such a beautiful area.
So as you can see, the nature's beautiful. It's wonderful. The lakes are incredible, and all these lakes, all these brooks. People who live there with their homesteads, and there's many others. This is just a few I was. There's plenty other of little brooks and lakes, and the people would have access to those to live. To go fishing, to go playing, to swim, and so that would natural areas. So that would be wonderful. So those are the areas that I spent by. Of course, went to the little river. I'll talk a bit after that. One of the days I took a walk westward. Here you can see. So the line starts where my camping was, and then I walked westward on the path to explore really. And I walked for a couple hours, maybe 3 or 4 hours, and then another 3 and 4 back. But it got me busy for a day. It was fun. I love to walk like that, and I got to explore a bit. So I got different points of view on the Moria River. I got to see. So it's a really, really huge area. There's so much space. We can fit, and of course, if we consider the entire area of the lake, like the entire circumference of the lake, we can fit thousands and thousands and thousands and many thousands of 5-acre lands. I say 5 acres. It's so much space. We can make them 5 acres in that area. So we can develop a beautiful town of people living in respect with nature. Composting, clean living, very like a kind of utopia style of life, maybe more rustic style of life. Definitely not the crazy city life, but at the same time so much more fulfilling. Happy life, happy families, happy children playing, safe. It's freedom, people living in freedom in their own home. No, that's wonderful. So anyways, I went to explore that place and I saw so much nice space, so much beautiful views on the river, which I will show videos of later. So now that I kind of explained a bit the kind, and I stayed there for a few days. Now here's kind of the analysis of the area as I saw it. So the first point is the climate. Again, I come from an area that is actually kind of somewhat colder, so I was surprised. And again, we have this kind of mental bias when we look at the map and we see, oh my God, this area is so far in the forest. It's gonna be cold, right? Remote. No, it's really warm. I was very surprised. Look, if you look north, there's the cities of Rouyn-Noranda, there's Val d'Or and Amos from the Quebec, and they're way up north, and people are living there and they're perfectly happy. I've been there in the summer, very comfortable, and it's way more north. If you consider that the Teos City of Freedom is much more southern to that. It's actually very close to Ottawa, really, in terms of climate. It's actually a warm climate, and you can feel it. When I was there, it definitely felt warmer and also drier than at least from more eastern where I'm used to. And an example is when I came back home, at around 6 p.m. I had to put my little shirt, with my hoodie, because I was feeling kind of frisky. But the whole time I was at the City of Freedom lands, I never had to wear it once, unless late in the evening when the sun went completely down around 9 p.m. Then it started to get cooler, and then you'd put it, but never before. It was warm. Here, still sun well up, and I have to wear it. It's kind of frisky. So definitely a warm climate, and definitely more dry, and it also reflects in the forest. You can see, because I'm used to where I am, the type of woods that we have reflect this humid. The wood's always humid. It's very hard to make a fire here. Everything's always wet. Even the wood's always wet because it rains often in the area. And the air is humid, so it's always wet. And things don't really dry, even if it gets sunny. It rains a lot. But versus when I went at the Teos lands, you could see lots and lots of dry wood. So it's dry. It's much more dry. And if you look at maps, it confirms it. It's a dry area, warmer area. Very nice, and you can see I'm getting into the forest. I'll explain, but yeah, the types of woods and forests that you see reflect that area. So that was a very, very pleasant surprise from the climate. Obviously, I didn't visit in winter, but I can see from the types of woods, the types of forests, the types of trees, and of course from the maps that I read, it does get in line with what the maps say, that it is less snowy, much more pleasant than where I am right now. So it's nice areas. I'd like to live there a whole year to get a bit idea, but it looks very nice because I live in the worst place right now, and it is nice too. So the forest. Now, when I went to visit the lands, I'll clarify that about 70% of what I needed to know is the type of trees, the type of forest that you find there. Now, was it going to be near 100% balsam fir, like in Christmas trees? Like, because in Quebec, it's a lot of areas are nearly only balsam trees, balsam fir, and it's okay in its own way, but it also comes with problems. For example, it's not great building wood, and it's definitely not good burning wood, and these forests are plentiful in Quebec. So I was wondering, when we get there, are we going to see the same thing? Well, to my wonderful surprise, no. It's hardwood. It's a hardwood forest through and through. So look, I'm not an expert. I didn't do a very thorough investigation, but by my own estimates, by my eyes walking around, generally it's between 80% to 90% hardwood trees, depending on the areas. Mostly because it sometimes it varies a bit. If you go inside deeper forest, then it becomes really hardwood. But if you're on the banks of rivers or the lakes, there you see pines seem to dominate. Where in the more sandy areas, pine dominates, and especially on the sides of rivers, there you actually do see a lot of balsam fir. But mostly only there. As soon as you retract into the woody areas, there they disappear, and it's mostly hardwood. And in terms of evergreens, what I was also surprised is that it was not dominated again by balsam fir for the no, it's dominated by pine. So obviously red pine, possibly even some white pine, but pine. Now, I don't know where you are when you're watching this video. I don't know in which part of the world you are, but from where I am, it's extremely rare because in most of Quebec, pine is relatively rare. You plenty of balsam fir, that is freaking everywhere. But actual pine trees, like the big pine, rare. So over there, you see it's the dominant evergreen, and I've seen incredible, beautiful pines. Some of them like not joking, 8 feet wide trunk, and the tree was so tall, probably the highest tree I've ever seen in my life, and there was a pine tree. So wow, so the forest is a huge hit. It's definitely a 10 out of 10 in my book. Because first of all, also because it's hardwood forest, the forest is very pleasant. Now, if you go into the untouched woods, the actual natural woods, it's very pleasant because so many hardwood trees are tall and solid that the leaves that fall in autumn make a litter on the floor. So you have a lot of space and you can walk easily, and it's a very breathable forest to walk. So that was nice. Now the problem is that, as we know, Quebec has been authorizing, licensing logging in those areas, and you can see some parts of the woods they have logged. You can see because obviously the forest, they probably logged them by my estimate maybe 30 or 40 years ago in some areas. And you can see because the trees are like the forest is regrowing, so the forest is back, but it's still small, relatively small trees, so it's definitely a young forest. And the problem with that is you can see that when they went with their machinery, they broke the floor. The fact that the forest has regrowth, not all the big trees don't dominate yet, so you have a lot of small bushes that are kind of annoying to walk. You get more swamps because they broke the floor, so obviously now you get pockets where water can accumulate. You get swamp, and now I do clarify, it's not a swampy area at all. There's not a lot of swamps, but there are some swamps, as pretty much any forest. But it's worse in the areas where you can see that the machinery passed at some point. But anyways, this can be adapted. This can be transformed. If we were to build a city, people can rework the land there and clean it. Eventually, it'll be nice and all. So yeah, the forest is very nice. Now again, like I said, but around the rivers. Now it gets more sandy. So when you're next to the rivers, now the pine trees and the evergreens really dominate in those areas where it's very sandy. But it's not that area. It's not everywhere. Really just around the river, maybe around on the side of the lake, and then but even on the side of the lake, it was mostly hardwood. So a really nice, very nice, very nice forest. And again, around the river, where I'll talk about the soil a bit after, the soil gets very sandy, and that's a good thing for the river. Very nice. It's not everywhere, just around the river. So when you're close to the river, you see a lot of blueberry bushes. Actually, I've seen some blueberry fields, wild blueberries, so large. I couldn't believe it. How it was the largest I've ever seen in my life. An entire field of wild blueberries. and that's pretty cool because, wild blueberries are pretty delicious, so that's very nice. And I'll return to that for the acidity of the soil. So that is really, the forest is wonderful. Now, again, I did mention at the beginning, and you've seen a video, that on the southern part of the lake, they have been clear cutting recently, so now the woods are clear cut. So good and a bad, as discussed, it might be good for building homesteads. But the good thing is that they did create those very nice roads, and it's ready to build. So, but anyways, all in all, for the woods, it's like 10 out of 10. Remember, the hardwood forest means that you have plenty of wood to heat your home. That's amazing. It is also an iron-rich area, so we could make plenty of cast iron stoves. Like this, it's very nice. We can be self-sufficient. Also, Italians living there would have near infinite hardwoods to build. So now that means you can build homes out of hardwood. That's pretty amazing. Your furniture would be hardwood from everywhere. Hardwood floors. We would have that kind of ability to use hardwood to build quality, because we all know in our days how wood is getting expensive, especially hardwood is extremely expensive. So we would have near infinite access to that. We could even, what Quebec was logging, now they have to stop. We could take over and at least log it a way that is convenient to us and that works for us. But we could sell hardwood or hardwood products to the world. That's something Teos could do. So very, very nice. Here I have an unrelated video, but I'm still going to play it because you get to see a bit the forest around. But it was the forest fires. I didn't know at the time because I was not disconnected from the internet. I didn't have the news. It was the forest fires coming from the north, the Rouyn-Noranda area. And you can see the sun was red, pitch red. It was very impressive. So here I play it as a little bonus.
Hey guys, just tonight it's like it's about 8 p.m. more or less. We're Friday, the 2nd of June 2023, and you can see the sun. There's this haze. I'm out of the news, so I don't follow the news. I do not know what it is, but I presume this is forest fires or smoke, I would presume. And you see the sun is sunsetting in this smoke, and I don't know if you can, how it shows on the camera, but it's very, like the sun is red, like a ball of fire. Pretty cool. Okay, the mosquitoes are eating me.
So that was an impressive moment. You could see the smoke, in the distance. The sun was dark red, and eventually the smoke came over. It was nice. It smelled good. It smelled like a campfire. It was very, very pleasant. It didn't stay the next day. The smoke was gone. Had blown over, and you can see the trees also, the very nice areas of trees. So, okay. Now that brings us to the soil. That's very important because if we want to build homesteads, we have to consider the type of soil we have, what we can do with it, and it's pretty good. Okay, no, it's not the best soil in the world because obviously we're in the woods. But depending on what we want to do, it's also a very good soil. So, without further ado, right away, it's mostly a sandy loam. Okay, so that's that type of soil, and it's good. There's different types of soils, and some may be more fertile all in all than other, but it's still a good soil. In the United States, there's plenty of regions who farm on sandy loam, and they're very successful. Australia also does it. So it's very good earth. It's just a matter of working the earth and adapting it. It may take a few years to adapt it correctly. But yeah, mostly sandy loam. When you get closer to the river, there it becomes sandy, very sandy, and that's a good thing. I'll talk about the river later. The sand is actually nice. Luckily, it's pretty located in the maybe 150 feet within the river, and after that, it returns to the earthy, sandy loam. So people can definitely grow. Now, I did mention that there's a lot of blueberries, mostly around the river again. So the blueberries are not everywhere, but close to the sandy areas of the river, lots of blueberries. This means that the soil is acidic. But that's fine because we can amend hard wood ashes because we have a lot of hardwood, right? So we can burn wood, amend the wood ashes to the soil, and eventually it will the pH will alkalinize and become will stabilize, and that will be fine for growing. So sandy loam, as the United States has been very successful for plenty of plantings. Lots of vegetables grow very well in that area. Here I gathered a few. For example, you got carrots, potatoes, parsnip, beet, radish, onion, garlic, asparagus, turnip, among others, are all vegetables that grow very well in a sandy loam type of soil. Of course, grapevines also, and since the warm areas, I was thinking, hey, who knows, maybe we could have vineyards in that area. So that's nice. Now, so yeah, it's just a matter of work, and again, amending wood ashes to the soil after a couple of years. The soil will may become very well for growing vegetables, and definitely maintaining your homestead. Now remember that in the early days, or forever also, we could also have farm animals, which they graze on the plant matter, and then we feed the animals. So that's all possible things. I could envision a buffalo. I've seen there is a buffalo farm near Shepo before you went. So this is all this area. We could actually import some buffaloes, get a buffalo farm running there, and other animals like beef and cows, and make our own cheese, milk, and so that's kind of thing we can do there, and develop that area to have our own little area of paradise. So that's nice. Also, another good thing of sandy loam is it has very, very good drainage. Okay, so I did mention at some point that there are a few swamps here and there, and that's not great for mosquitoes. But the good news is that it's mostly swampy because of that kind of topsoil, foresty topsoil that tends to be more permeable. But we could very easily do mosquito management by simply piercing. All you have to do is a hole, maybe a meter deep in the sand, and now it increases the surface area touching the sand, and the water will drain extremely quickly. So it's a very good area. We can very easily drain the swamps and the little pockets of water, and that would be great for mosquito control. I'll come back to that after. So again, a sandy loam type of soil, very good. Maybe not the best farming soil in the world, but we can do very well with it. So, and we know there's farming in other areas. For example, in the Red River, in the areas of Quebec, close to Mont-Laurier, where they have plenty of amazing farms, lots of good milk coming out of that area, meat, and so a lot of good farming on the banks of that river. So we can do the same in our area. We have our river, and farming and so we can develop our own. It totally can be done. So all in all, I'd say a good 3.5 stars out of 5 for the soil type. We can do great with it. Now that we talk about the river. Now the river is, in many ways, of course, it combines with the lake, but it's one of the hallmarks of the area. That beautiful, wavy, sinusoidal river that here, we've seen it earlier. I can show it again here on the map. I'll show this area here, so you can see again the river, how it zigzags endlessly, and it's a lot like there's a lot of space. It's so much surface contact with that river that it's so many, like all these homes. The way I would envision it is that homesteads would be created on both sides of the river. So and then we would build little bridges over the river, so the town would develop around that and go all the way down to the lake, and of course McCann Lake in the north, and even Lake Blanc, so White Lake essentially, so this would develop, and with little bridges, so we would basically build around the river, really, and touch the lake. The lake's all around, but the river would be kind of the central point, just because it's so pervasive in a good way, and it's so beautiful. Now, what struck me the most about that river was the sand. I've seen rivers in the forest before where you got a lot of dead trees and it's rocks, and but that's not it. That is not that kind of river. I mean, there's a few trees here and there, but we could clean that easily. But basically, it's a sandy river, a very, very, very sandy river. Now you can see, first of all, well, when you look in the river, there's banks of sandy banks in the water. So that's amazing. Everywhere, they're everywhere. So I could imagine kids, playing in the sand, building, like sand castles, and it's just so beautiful. Not only that, but you have beaches. Actual beaches. And what surprised me is that sand. In Quebec, in general, the sand is coarse. It's heavy, coarse, even almost stony, pebbly sand is very. And it was the first time in my life in these areas of North America that I saw pearly, fine, white sand like you would find in like Cancun, Mexico. I couldn't believe that sand is there, and it's everywhere. The bottom of the river is sand, so you can walk in the river with your bare foot and in sand. It's just wonderful. One day I actually went with a towel and I went sunbathing on the beach. Just it was wonderful. It was great. So that the sand is really a major high point of the river. I will show some videos in a few minutes just so you get to see that. Also, the water quality, the water is very nice. It's very warm, so because it's not a very deep river, actually. It has some deep points, but it's not a very deep river. The current is substantial enough to be significant, but not strong enough that anybody would drown like a dangerous river or a rafting river. It's none of that. It's actually a very soft current, so you can just let yourself slowly ride down. So it makes it a very safe river. So you could see families could go there, kids can play there. So that I could see that river as being a central point of our town, a bit like the river Seine that crosses Paris, the city of Paris. Well, City of Freedom and Teos Freedom would have that Moria River crossing the entire town with little bridges over it a bit everywhere. It's just fantastic. So really, I could envision people living there. One thing I noticed is that the water level seems to vary a lot, because when I arrived, I guess the river had some of the spring waters, so the river was higher. But when I left a week later, I could definitely see the water level went down significantly. Areas that I saw when I arrived that were flooded, when I arrived, were now I could see sandy banks had popped out of the water. So I think a good 2 feet of water disappeared within the week that I was there. I don't know how the river ends up looking at the end of the summer, how it looks in early spring, but it definitely seems to be a river that has a good variation, but also the banks of the river are very high, so it's a very contained river. So here I'm going to run a couple videos, many videos that I took, run them in sequence. It may seem long, but basically it's videos of the river at different points of the river. Some more westward, some around the areas that I was camping, and some more eastward. So that will give you a good idea of what the river looks at different points. And remember that in camera, it never comes through as quite as beautifully as how it is in real life. But when you're there in person there and you see it with your own eyes, it's very magical. So that river is AAA+, really. So here goes.
Hey everyone, Regis here. So we're on day 5, more or less. It is Tuesday, and we already had a couple people come. It was great, it was fun, and now they left. So here I am a bit western of the camping site, and this is the Moria River. So you can see how beautiful it is. Look at these sandy banks. Look at that. That's incredible. It's like a paradise. So we'll offer more a bit later. Thank you. Bye.
So as you saw, it's paradise. You know, I when I was there, I could really watching the river. I could really see the town, this kind of paradise, this sanctuary that we could build. I could envision these little bridges and these thousands of families living in peace, harmony, in freedom, in on their homesteads in this kind of new type of town that is kind of a rustic town, common law town, but where people live free, but still, you know, thousands and thousands of homesteads in this large area, but in respect with nature. Oh, I could see it. These happy kids, happy families playing in, you know, in the wow. Anyways, that river is something, and of course it's supplemented by it's the river is so fantastic that it's easy to oversee the fact that we have this amazing lake right south of there, or north if we could, but this amazing lake, which is in Teos we call Lake Zion. Now, in Quebec they call it Lake St. Patrice, but this is only a name that exists in their jurisdiction, so we don't carry. So Lake Zion in Teos. Now that lake, what struck me is that it's actually like it's easy to forget because there's no accesses to it, or very few access to it. It's actually kind of a hidden lake. It's a hidden lake. You know, I wanted to visit it, but access points are super hard to find. So here's the map here. So I decided to one day I did a trek to go visit the lake because there's no easy access. So here's the map. So I started from the camping site, and I walked all this yellow line, which is a good hour and a half maybe, all the way to the point where I knew that I would be the closest on the other side to the lake, where I wouldn't have to cross through, you know, lots of little islands and all. So I planned my trip. So I went into there, and then there I knew there was a little trail in that little indent of the river. So that orange line was a trail. And then I reached the river at basically one of its most southern point, with, as you can see, where after that it's one of the shortest paths to the lake. So I ended up, now, there are no bridges over the river unless you go all the way up to the road, which is far the east of the lake. So I had to swim, and that was kind of fun because it was a bit of an Indiana Jones kind of adventure. I was in the woods with my, and I had to, so I walked in the woods, and then when I reached the river, I basically had to cross the river as an adventure. You know, I had the plastic bag, put my backpack, my clothes, my shoes, and, you know, tie it again with my wrist with a rope so I wouldn't, you know, go through the currents, and then cross the river, very wild feeling. And then after that, get dressed again, walk through the woods up to the lake because there's almost no path there. So I walked through the woods and then reach the lake, and of course all the way back to return. So the lake, and then if I look at the other picture here, we can see the area. So the orange dot is pretty much where I was. And the blue circle there is pretty much the point of the field of view that I had. Now, mind you, it looks, when you're there, it's gigantic. It's just a huge lake. So, for example, on the top left, you see that little peninsula that kind of touches the corner of it. Well, it's huge when you see it. It's huge when you see it with your own eyes. I didn't remember that it was a little peninsula, so to me, I thought it was an island. And that island was gigantic. Like on it, I figured, oh my God, there could be homesteads just on that island, and we'll probably build a little bridge. Now I see there's actually, it connects to the land. So there's probably going to be, you know, some, I don't know, either the town center there or some homesteads. So much space. It's huge. And when I reached the lake, so that lake, Lake St. Patrick, Lake Zion rather, is surprising because it is so isolated. It's surrounded by woods. It's pristine. So it's pristine. It's untouched. It's virgin. There's nobody. There's no cottages. There's no boats on the lake. It's just lost in the woods, and it's so silent. So couldn't believe it. And the water was very clear. You could see very deep in the lake. So the water is very clear. So I was swimming. I went for a very nice long swim. And the water was nice, very pleasant, and I could still see the bottom even if I definitely couldn't touch. I could see the rocks at the bottom. It's a very clear lake. So what a jewel to have for an area of a town that we would build all around. And like I said, the river's so beautiful that you kind of forget the lake, and yet that lake is there. It's gigantic. It's a huge lake, beautiful, with islands and so much beautiful landscape that we could build such a beautiful area and town around there.
Well, hey guys, here we are finally after a bit of a trek and having to cross the Moria River, swimming. Now we are seeing beautiful Lake Zion, previously known as Lake St. Patrice, but in Teos known as Lake Zion. It is very hard or difficult to access. There's actually no real roads to it. It's a very well isolated lake, surprisingly. So as you can see, all the borders, all forest. There's near no access points. I had to cross forest to get here. But I mean, it's it's a beautiful lake. Virgin, completely virgin. There's nobody. Again, it's just pure forest all around. As pure as can be. So this is basically where I came in from. So the Moria River is on the other side, and there's definitely a couple of 4-acre lands that can fit, or 4 or 5 acres lands that can fit in between both. So it's very nice. Again, as you can see, all hardwoods, maple, birch, various other trees too. It's just beautiful. Some pines over there. So it's so the access points here is kind of rocky, but very easy access. I'll definitely going for a swim right after this video. The water is clean, very clean, very transparent. It's beautiful. This is as pristine as can be.
So,
all right.
Really, the lake was another 10 out of 10. Like really amazing, and just so easy to overview, overpass, or to, because again the river is so fantastic. I figure not a lot of people go to that lake. It's just it's still wild. It's still virgin, you know. So it's pristine. It's a pristine lake. No civilization at all. It's like a jewel lost in the woods. I just can't believe there's not already a city there. I can't believe Quebec didn't build a town there. I don't know why. Maybe because I think it's because the St. Lawrence River area is so nice that it just neglected that area. But if it had been any other province, but you know, they would have built a city there already. It's just a perfect area. So beautiful. So, and after that, I checked my way back. That was a really nice day that I visited the lake, and you know, it was quite a big ride. Crossed the river on my way back, and very nice. And I forgot to mention something about Moria River, by the way, which in Quebec they call it the Black River, but in Teos we call it the Moria River. Is that it is surprisingly it's a glittery river. The sand, I forgot to mention that, the sand is literally glittering like gold. It's as if the sand is covered in gold dust. When the sun shines, you see this gold dust everywhere. It's beautiful. Now, before anybody goes rushing to look for gold, it's not gold, it's mica. Okay, I actually did a bit of an investigation. I was curious. I thought, could it be gold? But I couldn't notice that it was floaty in the water, and I know gold sinks very heavily, so I figured it most probably wasn't gold. After some investigation, it is a mica. Not that they may not be gold, because from what I understand, mica and gold often come together. So maybe there is some gold, but I didn't find any. I didn't look much for it either. But still, but the mica, it's a gold. Like, it has no monetary value, but it has value in its beauty and its visual beauty. You're in the river, walking the river, and you see these flashes. It's like a starlight. It's just so beautiful. It adds to that surreal effect of feeling that we're in heaven, like in Elysium. Really, wow. The area is 10 out of 10 area in terms of beauty. Okay, so really, to kind of wrap up here. The wildlife also was really, like, it's very clearly there's superior hunting in the area. Lots of hunters are operating there. In terms of animals, what I saw, I've seen a snapping turtle, but not the water kind. It's like more like the forest kind, like with the snapping head and it's brown and the big shell with spiky shell. That was I had never seen that before in my life. I thought you only saw those in Africa or South America. I was surprised to see that there, so I did see that. I also saw regular green turtles. I've actually seen a few. In terms of animals, I've seen a beaver. Okay, well, mind you, there's beaver dams everywhere, so it's very active in beavers. And also on the side of the river, in certain areas, you see big maple trees or big birch trees all fallen, and you can see it's the beaver. Like he chewed up the base and the tree fell, and there's many like that. So beavers are very very active in that area. But I actually saw one. He was. It was like this little waterfall, and he was trying to. He didn't hear me because he was under the water. He was trying to go up the rocks, and he kept sliding down. He couldn't make it, so I was just like watching him. Cute little animal, very very cute. So beaver there. I also saw coyote. It could have been a wolf, but to me, I didn't see him very long. But but it looked like a coyote because I saw him running away. He was getting away from me. Not he didn't. He was just. And I could see, it's like a very big dog. I could see the gray fur, kind of short gray fur with brown in it. So more like a coyote than a gray wolf altogether. I didn't get a very good look. I only saw him going away, but he was close, maybe 30 feet or so as he was running out into the woods. I guess I surprised him. So that I got to see that. I did not see any bears, but I do know that there are bears because I've seen tracks in the sand and as I was walking. I've also seen a hunter. He was trapping bears, so I know there is bears, but I have not seen any. It would be black bears. When I was camping, I was careful, of course, not to leave any food outside, so I did not attract any bears, so that worked. So I didn't get to see bears, but there are them plenty in the area. There are also plenty of moose. Oh my God, there's moose everywhere. I've seen myself, my very first morning, that first video you saw of the clearings, on that very morning, I saw a mother moose and her calf. They were actually curious. They came to kind of see me. They were still maybe 100 feet away, but they were kind of looking at me. The mother was kind of going around, wondering what I was. So anyways, so they're very, very curious. And eventually she left, and well, they left. Somebody else who came to visit was there. He also saw a moose, took a picture there, and I saw tracks of moose everywhere. Really, they're everywhere. The moose are very active. There's tracks everywhere. You see tracks going to the river here. There lots of moose. So for the hunting, I guess it must be very very good, and you can see it because there's also lots of hunters in the area. I did not see any deer or white-tailed deer myself, but I think there may be some because I did see tracks that seemed to be deer, smaller tracks. I did not see deer myself, so I can confirm. In terms of birds, I've seen vultures. These bald-headed, red-headed, like a condor. Vultures. That was surprising. I've also seen falcons, but the highlight of my trip was a bald-headed eagle. Yes, I've seen a bald-headed eagle. He was circling not so far away from my camping site, and he was kind of low actually, so I could see very clear. I didn't have my camera on me, so I couldn't take a picture or a video, but I could see very clearly a beautiful white bald-headed eagle doing his circles. Now that is not something you see every day, and we had it in Teos. Imagine that. So that was cool. There's also plenty of fish in the lakes. I actually fished a fish myself. Thank you to somebody who loaned me his fishing rod. So I ate the fish. It was delicious, fresh fish. Wow. Anyways, everything's there. We have it all. And finally, before I wrap up, of course, there's the topic of the bugs, the mosquitoes. Yes, there was a lot. Some black flies. They weren't too annoying because they don't come up too much during the sunny days. And they disappear at night, so they're only there to band in the evening and in the morning. Now, mind you, it was sunny every single day that I was there, so I had the sunny days. But if you get a rainy day, then the flies don't have the sun, so they're certainly more active. But I didn't get to experience any of those. But most noticeably, it was mosquitoes. Now, lots of mosquitoes, and as I was there many days, the number was increasing. So by the time I left, the amount of mosquitoes had increased dramatically. Now, to be fair, I was camping close to a swamp, right? So as I walked around, the amount of mosquitoes wasn't always the same. Some areas there was almost none, and where I was sleeping. There were many, but I knew there was a swamp. Now we could ask, why did you camp near a swamp? Well, again, because there was other areas, other nice things in that area. And as I mentioned earlier, I would have liked to camp and move around with my tent and camp at different places, but I had to leave my tent where it was in case people would come to the rendezvous point. So I couldn't move. So, to mosquitoes, it was a lot of mosquitoes, but not more than anywhere else. I mean, mosquitoes are everywhere around Earth, right? So every city, I'll take Quebec for example. Every city, like Quebec City or Montreal Island or Ottawa area. I mean, at some point they all had mosquitoes too, right? Or if you take Chibougamau, they had mosquitoes too. It's just at first you clear the area and you do mosquito management, and over time then the amount reduces and you get a manageable amount. So for the lands of Teos, it's the same. There's a lot of mosquitoes at the beginning, mostly because of that water logging. That is the remains of the logging activities of Quebec, that they have been clearing the woods and leaving these kind of unequal terrain. But as we would populate the area, we would do management activity to clear these little swampy areas, especially thanks to the sandy loam type of sand of soil. It's easy to drain. You just have to pierce and augment that contact area, and then the swamps will drain. So we could do good management and reduce the mosquito amounts to a good level. The river has a good current, so it's not conducive to mosquitoes. So it really comes from the swampy areas, which can be cleared. And there weren't that many, so it's not a particularly swampy area at all. So we could do management. So it's mostly in the first few years, the pioneer years of the establishment of the town, that we would have a lot of mosquitoes until we get results from our activities of managing mosquitoes. So the first few colonists or settlers will have to bring anti-mosquito oils or also mosquito netting. If we didn't have that, it would be tough. But I do remind you that 200 years ago, our ancestors did all that without any machinery, without any Muscal or DEET, 30% DEET sprays. They didn't have any chainsaws. They arrived with their horse and buggy, and they were picking axes and hand saws, and that's how they clear the woods to create which we now use as cities. And they manage the mosquitoes too. So just saying that we're kind of weak nowadays, where we were like, mosquito. They did it way worse in those days. So anyway, so that was the bug. Lots of bugs, but manageable, very manageable, and we can certainly improve. And the idea is that as the town would develop, we would manage the area, and eventually it will become very pleasant, like any other town and city. So that kind of wraps it up. Now I'll just go for my final remarks. So I kind of repeat how I started with the result, is that it's just a wonderful area. I was really pleasantly surprised by what I found. I didn't know what kind of forest and woods and area I would find. Would it be a junk area with garbage woods and not good? No, it turns out it's a paradise. It's a hardwood paradise. The weather is nice. The lakes are beautiful. The forest, the nature is just amazing. It has this river. I didn't know the river. Would it be like a garbage river or whatever? It's a sandy paradise with actual beaches, sandy beaches. Can you imagine that? In the middle of the woods of nowhere. And of course the big lake again is just, so in terms of potential, it's a 10 out of 10 kind of area. It really is amazing. Now this and because it's so big and so large, the river's so long, the lake's so big, we can have so many 5 acre, in that area there's so much space, we can make them 5 acres. So a 5 acre homesteads, thousands and thousands. So we can really build a utopia society of people living in freedom and in peace and justice inside Teos, while the rest of the world possibly may go to hell. We would have our. Now, all this being said, it is mitigated by the distance factor, which, as I've said earlier, is also an advantage in some ways, because it allows us to be isolated and a bit like a sanctuary. It acts as a good buffer between the other areas, so they won't invade us. But at the same time, it makes it hard to get to establish ourselves. So it's not you know, if that place is I don't know, 10 hours away drive from where you live, it's not so easy to say I'm going to go build a cottage. You can't just go on the Friday and come back on the Sunday night. So it's extremely hard to build, and also because the roads are so long and deep in the woods and difficult to access and rough, that it's not easy to get materials delivered and contractors to come and build. So it's not going to be easy building, and I realize that it's just too hard. Okay, so again, in the end, after all this, the final verdict is it's a wonderful potential sanctuary. It's just a fantastic plan B. Okay, plan B. So this, because I realize that in the end, most people will not move there unless they're desperate, unless they're scared, unless the world's falling apart. Then they would, do it out of necessity. But they won't do it otherwise. People are too comfortable in their current little homes. Nobody wants to do and it's just too hard. So so I don't think it's going to populate anytime soon, if not ever. But we have it. It's part of Teos. It's there. It's our plan B. Okay. So obviously, as a plan B, it means that from now on, now that I'm going to wrap up this video, leave it online, and it's going to remain as a bit of the documentary of that area, and it remains open. Over time, maybe some people will say, hey, I'm willing to do it. It has to be very courageous people, because it's a tough settler life, at least a few years before it establishes as a town. And so you have the mosquitoes, you have nature, so it's going to be hard. So it's a very specific type of people that will say, we're going there. Now, there will be some, maybe. So I see it going this way. In terms of my efforts, me, Regis, I would love to live there. And I dream of someday, before I die, seeing a town there. And to be honest, I would love to live there. When I saw the area, the kind of nature, the kind of area, I dream of living there. But I just can't, because building Teos, it requires too much of me. I can't dedicate that time. So it's going to be for others. Hopefully, maybe someday I'll come and visit, and I'll, be able to come and visit a town. But I can't myself be a pioneer of those towns. I have to focus. And because it's going to be a plan B, we're going to focus on what is going to be plan A, which is actually to focus on these little areas of public lands that were a bit everywhere, and establish people there. Or also focus on people that will basically become Tayans but live on their current lands. Lands that are technically registered in foreign states, like Quebec, like foreign state of Ontario, generally part of Canada or other United States. Technically, but they are still legally Tayan citizens, and so they are protected. And we may actually focus on a more, these little towns, but then also a more online life for Teos, actually establish common law courts that are virtual, that will held online. So we're going to focus on what is more realistic in the short term to get things done, because I don't think anybody will settle and go and act as pioneers and move to these areas anytime soon. Only when people will be desperate. This being said, it's a plan B. It's still there. So I see it happening in two ways. Okay, first of all, it's open at all times. Okay, so it's our lands, and they are our lands today. So if some people say, hey, I'm willing to go, I'm alone, or we're willing to take that risk, we're going to go, we're ready to go now. What? You can go now. We can already allocate you your 5-acre land, and you can go and settle now if you want. This being said, I don't quite recommend it, because if you go alone, or if you just, 2 or 3 families, you're not enough to benefit from the effect and the protection of a society, okay? And that makes it more risky, because remember that there's hunters over there, and the hunters won't be too happy to see new people arrive. Now, these hunters, they're usually Canadians, so they have laws that they have to respect. But if you're a small group, not big enough to carry a certain weight, they may be problematic, and you can't fight, not fight physically, but fight back with law. You can't. But if you really say, Regis, I want to go, I'm willing, I'm going to build my little, I'm young, I got energy, I'll do it now, no matter what. Well, you can. But what I would prefer to do is, because it's a plan B, we're going to set up a list, and we're going to get people to, families or people that want to move. We're going to gather everybody on the list until we have enough. Now, I think if we have a bare minimum of 50 adults, okay, 50 adults, that's 25 families. That's the bare minimum, but more like 100 adults. So that's 50 families. So once we get that bare minimum of 50 families on the list, when everybody, and then once we gather enough and we have, and then we can say, okay, well now we're ready. Now we move. You can move in to colonize your, and then everybody moves in at the same time and then starts building the town. Yes, it's going to be pioneer life, but now you're doing it as a group, and being at least 100 adults, 100 people, or plus we don't count the children, so maybe a bit more, so 100 or more adults. Well, now you benefit from the weight of an actual town with your own government, but also more importantly your own legal courts, right? The common law courts of Teos now are active, and you can have your own sheriff of the area. And so now if the hunters become problematic, well, they're interfering with the state. Now that's serious stuff. You can get the sheriff to arrest these guys, and if they commit crimes, trial them. Now that's in case of crime. So just point being is everybody has to live and let live. The hunters can still do their thing if they don't bother anyone. That's fine. You guys build your homestead, and everybody lives in peace. So this is how we're going to proceed, unless some people are insisting they want to go alone. But mostly we're going to build that list, and over time, and when we have enough people, then we're going to launch the colonization of Freedom City, which may take a few years, or maybe it's going to be fast. It depends on how it goes, but that's going to be on the kind of on the side. Still active, but plan B. Of course, all this being said, I'm going to focus Teos on the more immediate results, which is, like I said, the smaller areas. So for example, in Quebec we have the Orford area that is seems going to be developing well, a town there with lots of people, and we have others more in the area of Quebec City. In Ontario we'll develop the Swift Rapids area, so there we can have little towns, so it's closer for people to build their area, so it's easier access to build a little house. You can go to the hardware store, buy your stuff, get it delivered, so it's easier if you're close to civilization, So there you have it, guys. And everything I said, by the way, also applies to Eden City in the province of Canon in the west, right? That is in the area generally known as British Columbia, right? So because I think it's the same for them, a very similar area. They have a big lake, Bonaparte Lake, and it's in the woods, so it's undeveloped. So this everything I said somewhat applies to them in the sense that it's going to be a great plan B. And same thing, we're going to gather a list, and when we have enough colonists, then they can move and begin developing that area. But it's going to be a plan B, so we're still going to focus in areas, smaller pockets of people that will be on public lands closer to the cities, and or people that also will remain on there rather in their lands, but will become tie-ins, and we still support them with courts and all, just because we'll be more separate. We'll bring that online, so that's what we're going to focus on a more online virtual experience for the legal courts. You can still get justice, but we'll do it through the internet, which allows us to be spread around better, which is easier because that's where we already have quite a bit of tie-in citizens, but everybody's a bit everywhere. We're all spread out and quite a bit, so we're not together. So I think the internet in the end will be our common law town for a while, until at least we gain a more critical mass, and then little towns can build. So for example, I do know that the Orford area, if it becomes what it seems it will become quickly, well, they will be independent fairly soon with their own government, their own courts and all, and then we'll see with the others. But so it will basically, we take it day by day and we grow as we can with what will be given over time. Okay, so that's it, everyone. I hope you enjoyed it. All in all, it was a fantastic trip. I had a great vacation, and again, like in the end, all in all, that area is just it's a jackpot, right? We hit the jackpot with that area. It's funny that we kind of found it randomly among many other choices. I kind of chose it because of the Moria River, and I turns out I was right. It's random luck, but we hit the jackpot. Wonderful area. All in all, everything considered, it's a 10 out of 10. So I do hope, again I repeat, I do hope that before I die, someday I'll be able to visit, or maybe even live there. I would love to live there, and there will be a little town or a town there with homesteads, and I'll be able to enjoy a smoked fish from the area, or I don't know, some smoked buffalo from the area, and meet the people, and it will be a town. And I'll be able to sit and watch the beautiful lake and then the river, and I'll see children playing in the river. Wow. Anyways, that's kind of a dream that's I would love to see before my end days. So anyways, thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.